All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're unpacking a pretty startling forensic analysis of South Africa's finances. Now, the source material we're looking at argues that the country's economic crisis isn't some kind of accident, but actually the result of a deliberate, engineered design. So, let's start the investigation.
So, right out of the gate, the source document hits you with a set of numbers that are just impossible to ignore. On one side, you've got the total personal income tax collected. That's about 845 billion rand. On the other side, the salary bill for public sector workers, 853 billion rand. The math here is, well, it's brutal. The income doesn't even cover the state's own payroll.
And this leads directly to the source's incredibly stark conclusion. Before a single rand is spent on anything else, hospitals, schools, even fixing a pothole, the entire personal tax base is already gone. This is the central crisis, the financial crime scene, if you will, that this entire analysis sets out to investigate. To really get our heads around the source's claims, we're going to follow its investigation through 6 key stages. We'll start with the bankruptcy threshold, then follow the money in the architecture of the harvest. After that, we'll uncover the 9.5% trap, look at the odious debt argument, reveal the supposed endgame in the digital enclosure, and then wrap it all up with the final signal.
So let's kick things off with Section 1, the bankruptcy threshold. The source argues this isn't some distant possibility. It's a mathematical certainty happening right now. The state is already insolvent before it even starts trying to provide any services.
To explain this whole cycle, the analysis uses a really powerful analogy, a Ponzi scheme. It argues the state isn't really functioning by using tax revenue for services anymore. Instead, it's just stuck in this loop of borrowing new money simply to pay the bureaucracy's salaries and service its old debt. It's become a closed system that's just spiraling inward. You know, that kind of begs the question. If all this revenue is being collected, where is it all going? And that brings us to Section 2, the architecture of the harvest. This is where we follow the money to see how it's allegedly diverted before it can even reach the domestic economy.
First, let's just get a sense of the scale we're talking about. The source document points to a projected total revenue harvest of 2.13 trillion rand for 2026. That is the total amount of money in play here, the entire prize that's being collected.
The source claims this diversion happens through 3 main siphons. First, there's a geopolitical one. When oil prices go up, the currency gets weaker. Second, what it calls a double harvest on fuel, where people are paying both state taxes and international profits because of low refining capacity. And third, and this is a big one, interest dominance, where payments to global lenders are just taken right off the top.
And this chart really paints a picture of that third point. According to this analysis, 21 cents of every single rand collected gets immediately pulled out to pay interest to global lenders. It never even has a chance to enter the domestic economy. This, the source says, leaves the country in a permanent state of energy inflation.
Okay, this brings us to the absolute core of the source's entire argument. It's the specific mechanism that it claims is designed to make sure things fail at the local level. It's called the 9.5% trap. So, according to the source, the reason local municipalities are always failing isn't an accident. It's actually engineered to fail right in the national budget's division of revenue. In other words, it's a design feature, not a bug.
So, here's how this alleged trap works. Step 1, local government, the people responsible for the physical grid, water, electricity, sanitation, they're stuck with a national budget allocation of just 9.5%. Step 2. That amount is mathematically guaranteed to not be enough, so critical infrastructure gets starved of funds and, inevitably, it collapses. Then comes Step 3. This collapse acts as a debt trigger, forcing municipalities to take out these high-interest loans just to keep the lights on, which turns public failure into a guaranteed payday for private lenders.
So if this system is really a deliberately engineered trap like the source claims, what are the legal implications? Well, this brings us to what the document calls its smoking gun, the legal principle of odious debt.
Odious debt is a concept that exists in international law. Basically, it refers to a national debt that's taken on by a regime, but it doesn't actually serve the best interests of the nation. And critically, it's created without the real consent of the people.
The source argues that South Africa's debt meets all 3 of the legal conditions for this. First, absence of consent. Citizens never signed off on a funding model that was designed to fail. Second, absence of benefit. The new loans don't fix the system, they just feed a pre-designed collapse. And third, creditor awareness. The lenders supposedly know that the 9.5% trap makes these loans mathematically impossible to ever pay back through normal revenue.
So, if the debt is unpayable by design, why would anyone even lend the money? Well, the source claims there's an endgame.
This whole manufactured crisis is just a setup for a new, high-tech system of automated debt recovery.
The argument here is that the visible mess, the failing infrastructure, the protests, all the financial chaos, that's not the end of the story. It's actually the justification, the perfect excuse to roll out a mandatory technological upgrade to solve the very problems that were allegedly engineered in the first place. So what exactly is this upgrade? According to the source, it's built on three main pillars: a mandatory digital ID for every citizen, a central bank digital currency, or CBDC, to replace physical cash, and a state-controlled digital wallet known as the Mzansi account.
The source uses this really powerful metaphor to describe what it sees as the outcome. In this new system, your biometrics, your face, your fingerprints, they're not just for unlocking your phone anymore. They become the key to a system where, it's claimed, the state can automatically deduct debts, fines, and interest right from your account, completely bypassing any courts or consent.
And that brings us to the source's conclusion, the final signal. This section describes the interlocking architecture of control that's designed to manage this entire system.
This whole grid is described as having four pillars. You've got the archive for data, the glamour for media, the merchant for money and debt, and the broadcaster for communication networks. The source argues that when you put them all together, they form a complete architecture of societal control.
So to bring this entire forensic audit to a close, the source leaves us with three very definitive statements. 1. The audit is complete. The system has been analyzed. 2. The bankruptcy threshold has been crossed. The state is mathematically insolvent. And 3. The debt is odious. It meets the legal definition of being illegitimate.
But the analysis doesn't just end with a conclusion. It ends with a question that's directed outward. After laying out this entire architecture of alleged financial control and engineered failure, it leaves the final thought with us. In a system full of competing signals, what signal are you broadcasting?